Odysseus is a man of high intelligence, crafty and intuitive. He uses these qualities and abilities to effectively end a long-running war between the army he fights for, which is the Greeks, and their opponents, the Trojans. He accomplishes this with the idea of the famous Trojan horse, which was presented to the Trojans as a peace offering and a gift. This, of course, was a trick, and stuffed inside of it was a bunch of Greek soldiers who, in the dead of night, after the horse had been brought inside the city gates when everyone was asleep, they snuck out, they opened the city gates, and then they sacked the city. Now, all of this predates the events that are told in the actual story of the Odyssey. And as most people will know, the story of the Odyssey is actually about the journey home following the Trojan War. So, what is the journey all about? What is it really trying to tell us? And how does it relate to our lives today? It's a really old story, obviously, and this is the first time I've read it. And so this is just me trying to understand it and process it the best I can. Hey guys, I'm John. This is Bucket List Books, where I like to dig in and talk about life and, of course, books. Appreciate you guys checking out the videos. Now, in his 10-year journey home, Odysseus faces many challenges, including the Lotus Eaters, the Cyclops Polyphemus, Aeolus and the Bag of Winds, the Laestrygonian giants, the witch Circe, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, Helios the sun god, Calypso, and finally the Suitors in his own home. Each one I found represented a different lesson, a different challenge that he had to overcome. To me, the Lotus Eaters represented this temptation of forgetfulness and apathy, the inclination to just stop caring about what is important in our lives. How tempting would it be to just lose all notion of attention and responsibility about what is important and what our priorities are and what they should be? The infamous Cyclops Polyphemus presents another challenge, which is the enemy of humility, hubris. After the terrifying experience of being locked in the cave with the Cyclops and seeing several of his men eaten, Odysseus, in his trademark cunning and gift for strategy, convinces the Cyclops to get drunk on wine, and then after that, he passes out. Odysseus and his men then burn a sharp stick, and then they stick it in the Cyclops' eye, which blinds him. Instead of taking the win and escaping with what men he had left, Odysseus, in his arrogance, he shouts to the Cyclops that it was he, Odysseus, who blinded him. Of course, this was a huge mistake on the part of Odysseus, because the god Poseidon, who was actually the father of the Cyclops, now knew who had blinded his son. And so he vowed that Odysseus would never get home alive. After that, King Aeolus and the Bag of Winds he gives to Odysseus as a gift to send him home with brings forth another problem, which is envy, only this time it's on the part of his men. So they were jealous of all the treasure that Odysseus was coming home from Troy with, and when they were just in sight of their home in Ithaca, the men, in their envy and jealousy, opened the Bag of Winds, which contained these mighty winds of the world, and once they did that, the wind was unleashed and it blew their ship way off course, and then it sent them deeper into a journey of testing and struggle. The jealousy they had doomed them into more peril. After that, they happened upon the island of the Laestrygonian giants, where they would face their greatest challenge yet, which is that unexpectedly and suddenly, every ship except Odysseus's is hit with boulders and sunk and kills all the men on board. It was only out of simple dumb luck, or maybe some kind of subtle intuition, that Odysseus didn't park his ship inside the high-walled harbor with all the others. It was because of this one decision that his ship and the men aboard it were not killed. And perhaps that is the point here. Maybe Homer is here to remind us that sometimes in life, bad things happen, and no amount of planning or strategy in the moment can really prevent it. In life, we are forced to confront the fact that so much of it is outside of our control, and that no matter how much we do, sometimes the simple reason for any given outcome is just due to where we parked our ship. Also, I know I'm saying parked like it's a car. That's probably not the right word. From there, Odysseus and his men were held by the witch Circe and her temptations of distraction and comfort. Her palace was littered with animals who were presumably formerly men who she had transformed with her magic. And after changing Odysseus's men into pigs, she attempts to do the same thing with him, except Odysseus had ran into Hermes, who was a god and who gave him a special herb that would prevent the transforming effects of her magic. So he is actually able to avoid that same fate. Once he avoids that, Circe does a 180 and showers him with comforts and changes his men back to their former selves. To me, her challenge to Odysseus is the temptation of lust and comfort, which he has to overcome so he can continue his journey home. Once he does, Odysseus then travels to Hades, which is the land of the dead, the underworld. And there he faces the realities of death itself. The struggle for Odysseus up until this point has been mostly external. It's been troubles that have to do with either men or gods or monsters. In the land of the dead, first he has to speak to Tiresias, who gives him knowledge and understanding. He tells Odysseus why all this is happening to them, but importantly, he's not removing the pain. I don't think it's really supposed to. Understanding may lead to acceptance, but not necessarily to a state that is free of the pain. After Tiresias, he speaks to the spirit of his mother, who actually had died after Odysseus went to Troy to go to war, and she died from the grief of the thought that she had lost her son. He also speaks to King Agamemnon, who was in Troy at the war, and also Achilles, where he confronts the fact that death is also coming for him, for Odysseus, someday. It almost seemed to me like everybody he spoke to, which there were a lot, all kind of represented different paths that he might go down on, which kind of represents paths that we all may go down on, whether it's jealousy or the pursuit of glory, things like that. Whenever Odysseus sees Achilles and he tells him that he was honored in life as a god, and now that he's dead, he can be lord of all the spirits around him. Achilles responds by saying, "I'd rather slave on earth for another man, some dirt poor tenant farmer who scrapes to keep alive, than rule down here over all the breathless dead." It's like his words indicate a rejection of the ideals towards glory and fame, which is something he was famous for. Because what's any of that worth if we're all going to die anyway? The temptation of fame and glory is a universal struggle. And like all the other challenges that we've mentioned so far, they affect many of us, just like Achilles and definitely just like Odysseus. While the experience in Hades can symbolize an emotional and psychological turning point for Odysseus, it's far from the end of the obstacles that he has still yet to overcome before he can get home. Following that experience, he and his men also sail past the island of the Sirens. This is a famous scene, and interestingly, I didn't realize it's literally like 2 paragraphs in this whole book of like 500 pages. So I thought that was interesting that it's a very short, small section, but it's actually extremely well known. So as before, Odysseus and his men are tempted through lust and luxury and distraction. Here they are tempted through like knowledge and praise. The Sirens offer songs of adulation. They want to sing the praises of whoever happens upon them and draw them in, which does what? It feeds into the egoism and the positive narrative that we already have about ourselves. It insists upon one's greatness, forever halting growth or progress, and actually killing anyone who is drawn into it. Importantly, Odysseus does listen to them, but he prevents himself from being able to act upon hearing their song by stopping up his men's ears with wax, and then he has them tie him to the mast of the ship. Why would he do that though? So why not simply plug his own ears as well and then just sail past the island? Well, for one thing, he's curious. He wants to know what their song will sound like to him, but the trick is that he knows that he must take measures to control himself once he does. For him, and maybe for all of us, avoiding temptation altogether isn't a realistic goal. What might be better is recognizing that it exists, but not to let it take control of you and determine the choices that you make. Immediately after the Sirens, Odysseus has to learn yet another of life's most difficult lessons. he has to choose between two paths, both of which will cost him dearly. On one path, he'll lose several men to Scylla, the six-headed monster, and the other path leads to Charybdis, the monster who gulps up the entire area of water down and everything near it. So if that happened, it would just pull the ship down, it would kill him and his entire crew. He made the only choice he could, of course, which was to sacrifice the few for the many. In this decision, there was no easy answer, and no matter what he did, there would be a cost. This was a demonstration of the realities of leadership, and it was one of the greatest tests throughout the entire story. Unfortunately for Odysseus and his crew, though, their struggles still far from over. So they are warned that if they happen upon the island of Helios, the sun god, they are not to touch his cattle. And of course, they don't listen. When they land on the island, because of the winds changing directions and they're unable to keep going in the direction they need to go, they are stuck there for a month and they eat up all of their food. And when Odysseus is off and he's praying for hopes that they're going to have a safe journey home and the winds will change, he falls asleep. And when his crew is starving back by the ship, they break in their self-restraint and they begin slaughtering the cows and eating them. So when I thought to myself, what's the lesson here? And I think there might be several. For one, there are the dangers of rationalizing bad decisions to satisfy the present moment, but which will come back to bite you in the end. And although the men knew that a perilous outcome awaited them if they were to give in to that impulse and satisfy their hunger in the moment, they chose to do it anyway. To them, the trade-off felt justified. They weren't just willing to wait it out and suffer in hopes that they might be delivered from it in the future. Another element to this was that Odysseus was not actually present when they made that decision. He was in fact asleep after praying. And that's because Odysseus has actually grown throughout this journey so far. And the men that he's leading, not as much. Through all the obstacles they've navigated, he as the leader has had to shoulder that responsibility. This event demonstrates more lessons in leadership, namely that you can never fully control what anybody else does, and that you really can't transfer the growth or self-restraint that you have to someone else. Perhaps he could have resisted the temptation to kill the cattle, but he couldn't pass that same restraint on to his men. Needless to say, their breaking the rules did come back to bite them. And upon leaving the island, they were hit with a massive storm, and all but Odysseus were actually killed. So then he washes ashore on the island of the lustrous goddess Calypso, and he's held there for 7 years. In all that time, he's offered what most people might fantasize about, which is comforts, pleasure, and even immortality, and yet it doesn't satisfy him. He is given everything in excess, but all he wants is to go home, to be with his family, and simply just to be mortal. Calypso holds him in this state of limbo, and even when she offers him what seems like the perfect life, for Odysseus, it's just anything but. He's literally been to hell and back on this quest, and all he wants to do is go home and just get his life back. When Odysseus finally does get home from Calypso's island, he still has one final test: patience. Patience after all this, after war for 10 years, and after traveling home for 10 more years, he still has to wait. And that's because a small army of offensive and dangerous suitors have posted up in his house, drinking his wine, eating all his food, plotting to murder his son, and trying to court his wife to take his throne. And instead of just going in and reclaiming his throne immediately, because that really wasn't an option, he has to plot his strategy and assume the life of a beggar, absorbing abuse and insults within the walls of his own home. This behavior is a far cry from the Odysseus we saw back in the Cyclops' cave, where he boastfully yelled his own name just because he had this excessive ego and he just had to get credit for what he had done. After everything that he's gone through, he finally grows into the man he needs to be to rise to the occasion, to do what is required in order to take back his home, his family, and his throne. He achieves the quality of self-control so he can finally obtain his long-awaited peace and victory. And of course, he does succeed in this. He takes down all of them. He takes justice, he gets his wife back, he gets his son back, and he gets his peace that he's been longing for so long. He made mistakes, he had temptation, and he had so many challenges he had to overcome, and he did do that. He is not perfect. He was never supposed to be. That's the point, I think, because none of us are perfect. We all have the temptation to seek the comfortable life, the things that will make everything easier, and yet the challenging road is still the more rewarding one. What challenges did Odysseus face that exist within all of us, right? Hubris, a desire for comfort, forgetfulness, curiosity, intelligence, pride, all of them, right? I think it's safe to assume that we all wrestle with most of these at some point in our life. And thanks to Homer, we have the perfect example of all of them through Odysseus. He fell victim to all of them, and as so often is seen in these stories of antiquity, the characters whose perspective we follow serve as sort of an everyman. They provide us with the opportunity to process their experiences, their achievements, and definitely their failures. They give us examples to help us understand our own limitations and pitfalls, and perhaps, if we pay attention, the ability to learn something about human nature, our inner selves, and of course, the world. More than Odysseus's well-known qualities, his cunning, his hubris, his curiosity, he's also very adaptive. Homer shows us that throughout this entire journey all the way to the end, Odysseus has to evolve and to adjust, or he surely would have died many times. And that might be the highlight, the main takeaway from all of this. We should never be so egotistical or hard-headed or careless as to be not willing to learn, to grow, to evolve, and to be patient. Life is too short, too unpredictable, and it's too profoundly beautiful to not pay attention to and embody the lessons that Homer provides us through this epic journey of Odysseus. Perhaps we might frame this whole thing in a more useful way just by saying that we are all Odysseus. His journey is truly our own journey. His growth can be, if we're willing to embrace the lessons learned, our growth as well. Thank you for checking out the video. If you liked it, if it gave you some value, please do consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video. It really does help me out a lot. And check out another video. I try to put them out every week if I can. It takes some time to read the books, to digest, to write the scripts, to film, edit, all that. So try to be patient with me. I try to get them out as fast as I can, but also not sacrifice the thought that is put into them. I just want to say that these interpretations of the story are just my own. I've only read the story one time. I have not seen the movie. That's not part of this discussion. This is really just about the poem. And if you have a different interpretation on any part of this story, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on this, because I think there's a lot of ways you can read into this and things you can take away from it. So I loved reading it so much. I would also love to hear what your thoughts are. So what do you think? What translation of this have you read? Is there any of them that you think are closer to the original than any others? I really don't know. This is the Robert Fagel's translation, which I thought was brilliantly written. The rhythm of it is very easy to get into, and I just had a great time reading it. So what's your favorite translation of the story? What's your favorite challenge or obstacle that Odysseus has to get through? And let me know what your thoughts are on my interpretation. I'd love to hear what you think. Again, thanks for watching the video. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. Let me know what you think. And thanks again for being here. I'll see you in the next video.